talk about poetry. Asynchronous learners, when you need to stop the video during your learning or go back, please do so. This is your learning. Our learning goal for today I will read the poem equipment to annotate it for rhyme scheme so that I can identify poetry elements. I know I have it when I can annotate the poem equipment with the poetry elements rhyme scheme. I need you to take time and click on the link in your Schoology folder and listen to the song by Tito Puente, Oye Como Va. You do not have to listen to the whole song, but at least listen to a minute and a half to 2 minutes of the song. You should have listened to the song by Tito Puente. Now I'm going to read a poem someone wrote about him, and that is Margarita Engel. Tito was born in 1923 to 2000, and he is from Puerto Rico. The poem is called Brave Music. When I was a small child at home in New York, neighbors complained because I drummed on pots, pans, windows, and walls. They said I was too noisy, too lively, too energetic, too wild. Now they call me the king of Latin jazz, and no one thinks my bold music is noise. That is one of my favorite poems, and it's the reason why I wanted you to listen to the song by Tito Puente is because in the beginning, he was considered to be loud and lively, too energetic, and then his hard work paid off because he was called the king of Latin jazz. Today, we're going to look at lyric poetry. And to get a full chart, you just click on the link in your Schoology folder. Okay, first, in a lyric poem, the author's purpose is to use focus and imaginative language to form, to capture emotion and thought. Characteristics of a lyric poem: it expresses an insight or new understanding, has a speaker or a voice that tells the poem, uses language with multiple layers of meaning, conveys a theme or insight about life, imagery and figurative language that describes things in new, fresh ways, may break some grammatical and standard English rules. And its structure, it's divided into lines that are often organized into groups or stanzas. And that's different from the stories we've been reading because the stories we've been reading, um, they're structured by sentences and paragraphs. But in poems, you don't always have like complete sentences or sentence may be divided over two lines. And it may use rhyme scheme and meter. And the word may tells you it doesn't always have to rhyme, use a rhyme scheme or meter. Okay, before we get started with our poetry lesson today, I'm going to pre-teach some words, and that just means before you start learning that will, for some people it will be new, and other people's it will just be a review. A rhyme is the repetition of sounds at the end of words. And if you look at the example, not in a house, not with a mouse. And house and mouse rhyme, and you're looking at the ouse signs, and you can think of some words that rhyme on your own, like go and flow or go and slow. The next one is repetition, and that is the use more than once of any element of language, a sound, a word, phrase, a clause, or sentence. And the example is batter, 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 swing. And if you think about the song that you just listened to, Oye Como Va, that was repeated over and over along with some other things. And in music, sometimes even like a sound will be repeated over and over and over again. The next word you're going to need is imagery. And it's the process of using vivid, descriptive words to give the reader a picture of what's going on by using any of the five senses. And that's to see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. And the example is the movie theater smell the butter popcorn. And an example that I would use from one of the stories that we've read, thank you, ma'am. Um, Langston Hughes used imagery when he said the large woman dragged the boy down the street. So you could create a picture in your mind. The next word that you need to know is metaphor, a figure of speech in which something is described as though it was something else. And the example here is the snow is a white blanket. The snow really isn't a blanket, it's just comparing it to a blanket. The next term is graphical element, and that's how the author uses capital letters, line length, and shape. And meter is a rhythmic pattern, and the pattern can go like really fast or it could be really slow. And the author uses that to help create a mood in a poem. Okay, today we're going to read a poem by Edgar Guest. But before we do that, I'm going to give you a little background information on the poet because sometimes when you're reading a person's work, you need to know something about them because their identity, their who they are, comes across in their writing. And this says on August 20th, 1881, Edgar Guest was born in Birmingham, England, to and the family settled into Michigan in 1891. When Edwin lost his job, that's Edgar's dad, in 1893, 11-year-old Edgar went between working odd jobs at school after school. In 1895, he was hired as a copyboy for the Detroit Free Press, where he would work for almost 65 years. So most of his life he worked at the Detroit Free Press. His father died when the poet was 17, and Guest was forced to drop out of high school and work full time at the newspaper. His first poem appeared in December 11th, 1898. And then he published more than 20 volumes of poetry and was thought to have written over 11,000 poems. Guys, that's a lot of poems. And he died on August 5th, 1959. So I want you to take time to stop and I want you to read the poem in your Schoology folder. And you need to stop the video. And when you're finished, come back. And when you come back, I want you to think about what did you notice about the poem. Um, so stop your video now. Okay, you should have finished reading the poem. And did you like it? And it's okay if you didn't like it. But if you liked it, what were things that the poet put in it that made you like it? Okay, so we're going to start annotating. And if you notice, I have highlighted my poem, some of the words in my poem. You don't have to do that. All I need you to do is to pay attention to the letters at the end of the poem. The letter at the end of the each line is showing that what is the rhyme scheme in it. And if you notice this poem, it's A B B C C, and that means that at the end of each line the A's rhyme, the B's rhyme, and the C's rhyme. And I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll stop and let you annotate your poem. And if you do not have access to a printer, you can write the rhyme scheme on notebook paper. Figure it out for yourself, my lad. You've all that the greatest of men have had. 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and a brain to use if you would be wise. With this equipment, they all began. So start for the top and say, I can. So if you notice, lad and had rhyme, eyes and wise rhyme, and began and can rhyme. Okay, now we're going to look at the second stanza. And we're going to start our lettering all over again because it's a new stanza. So we start our lettering all over again. We start with A, B, B, C, C. It says, look them over, the wise and great. They take their food from a common plate, and similar knives and forks they use. With similar laces they tie their shoes. The world considers them brave and smart, but you've all they had when they made their start. So again, the rhyme scheme was AA. The first two lines rhyme, use and shoes. The third and fourth lines rhyme, and then the fifth and sixth lines rhyme, smart and start. So I want you to continue to annotate the rest of the poem. And when you're finished, you will submit what you have today. And remember, if you do not have access to a printer, just write it on notebook paper, take a picture of it, and upload it into Schoology. If you send it any other way, I'm going to send a message back to you and say, hey, I need it in Schoology, the upload in Schoology, because it just makes it easier for me to grade your paper there.